Hi guys, welcome back to Crimson Rift Africa, where we journey through the darkest and most unsettling stories across the continent. If you've been with us, you already know we started our exploration in Nigeria, unraveling some of West Africa's most chilling cases tied to ritual, folklore, and the shadows of human cruelty. Now we continue our series by moving to Ghana, a country rich in culture, history, and spiritual tradition. Ghana's vibrant cities and peaceful villages alike carry stories that blur the line between ancient belief and modern horror. Here, age-old superstitions and contemporary crimes intertwine in ways that leave communities haunted and searching for answers. From the terrifying consequences of witchcraft accusations, to the disappearances that grip entire towns, to sinister networks exploiting the vulnerable, and youth drawn into deadly rituals under the influence of social media, Ghana reveals a complex tapestry where folklore is not just myth, but a dark reality. In this video, we will dive deep into 5 of Ghana's most disturbing cases, each unfolding over the past 2 decades, unveiling a world where belief, desperation, and evil collide. As always, this story is based on available online sources, eyewitness accounts, and official reports. It is meant for educational purposes only, and we approach it with the utmost respect for the victims and their families. Now, before we begin, I want you to think how much of what we fear in these stories is rooted in reality, and how much is born from the shadows of our own beliefs. Let's get into it. We take a deep dive into one of Ghana's most disturbing and complex modern phenomena, the Sakawa Boys. Long before the country was shaken by high-profile murders and trafficking rings, a new breed of crime was already brewing online, fed by desperation, greed, and belief in the supernatural. This is a story that blends ancient spiritual beliefs with modern technology, creating a shadowy world where cybercrime and ritual practices intersect in deadly and unsettling ways. Ghana is a nation rich in culture, tradition, and spiritual heritage. But like many countries, it faces social and economic challenges that push some of its youth toward desperate measures. In the midst of this struggle, the Sakawa culture emerged, a deadly fusion of internet fraud and occult ritual that has captured headlines and terrified communities. The term Sakawa became widely known in the mid-2000s, when news and social media began to expose young men involved in internet scams, who also engaged in ritualistic practices to ensure success and protection. These young men, mostly from poorer backgrounds, turned to cyber fraud as a means of quick financial gain. But unlike ordinary scammers, they sought supernatural aid. They visited fetish priests and spiritualists who promised to bless their scams, shield them from arrest, and bring wealth, sometimes at a terrible price. These rituals often involve sacrifices, ranging from offerings of animals to, in some reported cases, human lives. Stories abound of kidnapped victims who were never seen again, believed to have been used in blood rituals. Some Sakawa boys are also reported to abuse drugs to maintain stamina during long hours of scam operations and to seal spiritual pacts. The internet accelerated the spread of this phenomenon. Social media platforms became a double-edged sword, tools for fraud, recruitment, and the promotion of spiritual services tied to Sakawa. Some spiritualists even live-stream ceremonies, offering juju blessings to a wide audience hungry for quick wealth. Authorities in Ghana have cracked down on many Sakawa gangs, arresting individuals and disrupting networks. Yet the problem persists, fueled by poverty, unemployment, and the deep-rooted cultural belief in juju powers. For many, Sakawa represents a dangerous shortcut to riches in a society where opportunities are scarce. But the costs are immense. Families are torn apart by loss and shame. Communities live in fear of disappearances and unexplained deaths, and the moral fabric is strained as more young people fall into this dark cycle. So what really drives the Sakawa boys? Is it sheer desperation, or a cultural reality where belief in the supernatural still shapes everyday life? How does technology amplify these ancient fears and ambitions? I want you to think deeply about this. Have you encountered stories like this in your community? What do you believe is the root cause? Share your thoughts in the comments below. But what happens when the obsession with wealth, rituals, and the spiritual world crosses paths with something even more sinister, when it's no longer just about money, but about control, fear, and power over life itself. As we move further along the coast of Ghana, the atmosphere shifts. From internet fraudsters entangled in the occult, we enter a darker reality, one that shattered families, froze a nation, and exposed a terrifying underworld lurking behind smiling faces in polite neighborhoods. This is not folklore. This is not speculation. This is the story of missing girls, botched investigations, and a town that we'll never forget. Welcome to Takoradi. The mystery of the missing girls in Takoradi, a case that gripped the nation and exposed shadows of fear, suspicion, and unanswered questions. Let's explore what happened in Takoradi and the lingering questions that remain to this day. Between 2018 and 2019, the coastal city of Takoradi, a bustling urban center in Ghana's western region, was gripped by a chilling mystery that sent shockwaves through the community. 4 teenage girls disappeared over several months under suspicious and frightening circumstances. Each disappearance deepened the sense of dread among families and residents alike. The girls, all in their mid-teens, vanished without trace, leaving loved ones desperate for answers and the community fearful for the safety of their children. It began in July, when a young woman named Ruth Abaka went missing under mysterious circumstances. Weeks later, in August, another young woman, Priscilla Blessing Bentham, vanished after receiving a strange phone call. Then, as the year drew to a close, 2 more girls, Ruth Love Quason and Priscilla Karanchi, also disappeared. Each case followed a chillingly similar pattern. Families received ransom calls demanding money for the safe return of their daughters, but even after payments were made, the girls never came home. By December 2018, panic gripped the Sekandi Takoradi area. Rumors spread quickly, fueled by whispers of ritual sacrifice and occult practices. In a country where belief in spiritual forces runs deep, the possibility that these young girls had been taken for sinister purposes struck a nerve, igniting panic and distrust. Parents became increasingly protective, curbing their children's freedom and demanding action from the authorities. The police response was initially slow, hampered by limited resources and the complexities of investigating ritualistic crimes that often occur in secrecy. However, mounting public pressure and media attention pushed law enforcement to intensify their efforts. A breakthrough came later that month when a Nigerian man named Samuel Udeotuk Wills was arrested in connection with the kidnappings. But the relief was short-lived. In a shocking twist, Wills escaped from police custody, exposing deep flaws in the system and sparking national outrage. After an intense manhunt, police recaptured Wills in January 2019. He was found hiding in an uncompleted building, a location that would later reveal a horrifying secret. The investigation continued, and by June 2019, authorities arrested Will's accomplice, another Nigerian national named John Oji, in neighboring Togo. As police dug deeper, disturbing details emerged about the suspect's possible ties to occult groups. Investigators began to suspect that the kidnappings might be linked to ritual killings and human exploitation networks operating across borders. Then, in early August 2019, the investigation took a grim turn. Police searching a house in the Kanzawarodo suburb of Takoradi, once occupied by Wills, discovered human remains hidden inside a septic tank. 4 days later, on August 6th, a second search uncovered another set of skeletal remains in a well at the same uncompleted building where Wills had been rearrested after his escape. The discoveries confirmed the nation's worst fears. Forensic DNA tests later proved that the remains belonged to the 4 missing girls. The evidence also revealed that the girls had been sexually assaulted before being murdered. Both Samuel Udeotuk Wills and John Oji were found guilty of 8 counts of conspiracy to murder and murder. They were sentenced to death by hanging, bringing the long and painful trial to an end. For many, the judgment was justice finally served, but for the victims' families, the pain remained. Some still questioned how such a tragedy could happen and how the prime suspect had been allowed to escape in the first place. The Takoradi girls case left Ghana reeling, exposing deep cracks in law enforcement and highlighting the growing danger of cross-border crime and human trafficking. As you reflect on this case, consider the broader social and cultural factors at play. the intersection of poverty, superstition, and crime. What lessons can be learned to prevent future tragedies? Your thoughts and reflections are important. Please share them in the comments below. Just when the nation was beginning to catch its breath, still grieving, still questioning how such darkness could unfold in broad daylight, Ghana was shaken once again. But this time, it wasn't a serial predator or a faceless abductor lurking in the shadows. This time, the horror came from within the very heart of the youth. Two boys barely old enough to understand death, yet cold enough to plan it. What would drive children to kill? What could make the idea of sacrifice seem like a solution? And who, or what, was whispering promises of riches into their ears? This is the chilling case of the Kasoa Ritual Murder. In the coastal town of Kasoa, not far from the bustling capital Accra, a brutal ritual killing would expose the terrifying lengths some would go to in pursuit of wealth and power. Let's delve into the Kasoa Ritual Murder, an event that shook families, communities, and the entire country. Kasoa, a bustling town in Ghana's central region, had long been a place where families lived simple lives, where children played freely and neighbors watched out for one another. But this peaceful image was shattered by an act so chilling it seemed almost surreal. The perpetrators were two teenage boys, barely more than children themselves. They were not hardened criminals, nor members of any notorious cult. Instead, they were young youths caught in a web of poverty, influence, and dangerous belief systems. Their victim was Ishmael Mensa Abdallah, an innocent 11-year-old boy whose life was brutally taken in the name of money rituals. Reports revealed that these two boys had been drawn into a promise made by a charismatic spiritualist who appeared on Ghanaian television. This spiritual leader preached that sacrificing a human life could unlock untold riches and success. This message, broadcast into countless homes, found a deadly echo in the hearts of these vulnerable boys. Under the weight of poverty and a desperate desire to escape their circumstances, the teenagers convinced themselves that this act would be their ticket out of hardship. They lured Ishmael away from the safety of his family and the familiarity of his home, into a remote location where the ritual would be performed. The killing was deliberate and cold. It was not the act of confused youths, but one carried out with an eerie calculation fueled by fear, belief, and hope. News of Ishmael's disappearance quickly spread, sending waves of panic through Kasoa. The town's sense of safety was shattered. When the boys were arrested, the nation watched closely as the details unfolded. Investigations revealed a troubling pattern, not just of crime, but of cultural vulnerability. The case laid bare how poverty, social media influence, and unchecked superstition could combine to create a perfect storm. Community leaders and experts spoke out, condemning the messages that encourage ritual killings. They urged parents to educate their children, called for stricter media regulation, and demanded government intervention to protect the youth. This case forced Ghana to confront difficult questions. How could such a tragedy happen in a world moving toward progress and modernity? What role did poverty play in driving young people to such extremes? And how powerful was the influence of media in spreading dangerous ideas? The Kasoa ritual killing remains a painful reminder of the cost when belief in the supernatural is weaponized by those seeking to exploit hope and desperation. Think about the communities shattered, the innocence lost, and the urgent need for awareness and protection. What might have saved Ishmael? How can we break the cycle of fear and superstition that allows such tragedies to happen? I invite you to share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Your voice matters as we try to understand and prevent such darkness from spreading further. Just months after the Kasoa incident, a different kind of trafficking horror emerged in Accra. One that targeted the most innocent of all, newborns. This wasn't a crime of desperation or youthful ignorance. It was organized, calculated, and buried beneath the surface of hospitals and clinics that were meant to be places of healing and life. Who were the masterminds behind it? How many babies vanished before anyone dared to ask questions? And how deep does the rabbit hole go when life itself becomes a commodity? What unfolded next exposed a market of shadows, a chilling network where infants were harvested, sold, and vanished without a trace. This was Ghana's Baby Harvesting Syndicate. In early 2021, Ghana was rocked by the revelation of a chilling and secretive baby harvesting syndicate operating within some of its most trusted institutions. This dark network spanned across Accra, the bustling capital city in the eastern region, casting a shadow over hospitals, clinics, and social services that were supposed to safeguard the nation's most vulnerable. The syndicate was composed of healthcare professionals, social workers, and other insiders who conspired to illegally sell newborn babies to buyers both inside Ghana and abroad. Behind closed doors, these criminals orchestrated a sophisticated operation involving forged documents, fake adoption papers, and a complex web of contacts designed to evade law enforcement scrutiny. Many of the victims were desperate or uninformed mothers, some coerced by deceitful promises, others manipulated into relinquishing their newborns under false pretenses. These women, often lacking support or resources, were left powerless as their babies were taken and sold to the highest bidder. The buyers varied in their motives. Some sought children for adoption, hoping to provide homes to those without families. However, disturbing rumors circulated that a significant portion of the infants were purchased for sinister purposes, used in money rituals or occult ceremonies, believed to bring luck, wealth, and power. While these ritual connections were difficult to conclusively prove, they added a terrifying layer to an already horrific scandal. The exposure of this syndicate sent shockwaves through Ghanaian society. Parents, families, and communities were outraged that institutions meant to protect life could be complicit in such exploitation. Law enforcement agencies launched extensive investigations, resulting in the arrest of key figures within the network, including doctors, nurses, social workers, and middlemen. Yet many believe the syndicate's reach was broader and more deeply entrenched than the initial arrests suggested, leaving a lingering fear that more children remain missing or sold under the radar. This disturbing case revealed the fragility of trust in systems designed to protect the innocent and the devastating consequences when that trust is shattered by greed and corruption. It also highlighted the vulnerability of mothers, often isolated and without resources, who became victims themselves in a cycle of abuse. As you reflect on this story, consider the profound ethical and societal questions it raises. How can a society better protect its most vulnerable? What safeguards must be put in place to prevent such abuses? And how do cultural beliefs about rituals and power influence such dark practices? I invite you to share your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. What do you think must be done to ensure this never happens again? While the syndicates were being unraveled in city hospitals, an even more disturbing reality was being uncovered in a quiet home in Abesim. Abesim, a peaceful farming town in Ghana's Bono region, was not known for violence. With its tight-knit community and quiet evenings, it was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were hard to keep. But in the year 2021, something unimaginable shattered that calm. It was a discovery so horrifying, so inhuman, that it left a permanent scar on the conscience of an entire nation. The name Richard Appiah would soon become synonymous with evil. Richard was an ordinary young man in appearance, a footballer, an architect, known by some in the area for being quiet and keeping to himself. Nothing about him stood out until the bodies started appearing, or rather, until pieces of bodies were found inside his home. The chain of events that led to the discovery began when one of the boys, his stepbrother, 13-year-old Louis Agumeng Jr., failed to return home. His family reported him missing. What followed was a frantic search by relatives and neighbors. No one expected the trail to end at the doorstep of someone they all thought they knew, but suspicions had started to form. The missing boy's father, together with neighbors, forced their way into the house. What they found inside would haunt even the most seasoned investigators. Acting on a tip-off, the police went to Richard Appiah's home. What they found inside was something out of a nightmare. In his refrigerator, police discovered the mutilated body parts of multiple victims. Human remains, some carefully packaged, others freshly severed. In one room, the decapitated body of the missing young boy. In another, the victim's slippers and partially burnt clothes. A shallow grave dug into a nearby cocoa plantation in the property itself, where the victim's intestines were buried. The victims were not just nameless, faceless individuals. They were boys from the very same community, children whose lives were cut short in the most gruesome way imaginable. Initial forensic analysis revealed at least three known victims. Apart from Louis, there was another boy, Stephen Sarpong, age 15. His decapitated body had been discovered at the scene. There was also a yet unidentified head and a torso, pointing to the likelihood that the death toll could be even higher. It was not just the killings that shocked the public. It was the deliberate, calculated nature of the crime. Some of the body parts had been salted and preserved, suggesting cannibalistic intent. Others were frozen, like someone storing food for later. This was no crime of passion or sudden madness. This was methodical, cold, ritualistic. People across Ghana and beyond were horrified. How could someone carry out such monstrous acts without detection for so long? And more hauntingly, was he working alone? Questions multiplied. Was it purely a case of a deranged individual? Or was Richard connected to a wider network? Could this be linked to ritual killings, money-making schemes, human trafficking? The lack of clear motive left space for terrifying possibilities. In the court of public opinion, people were furious. The anger was not just directed at the killer, but also at the system. How had he acquired and kept young boys in his home without suspicion? Why were parents not alerted sooner? Why had earlier signs, if any, been missed? The police quickly moved to secure the crime scene and arrested Richard. He was taken into custody, and the images of him being escorted by officers spread quickly across social media. His blank stare, his unassuming face, none of it seemed to match the horror he had allegedly committed. In the following days, more evidence emerged. Richard had reportedly kept a diary of sorts, recording his thoughts, and some say, documenting his crimes. There were signs that he may have exhibited sociopathic behavior, but motive remained elusive. In Ghana, as in many West African countries, the line between criminality and superstition often blurs. Some whispered that Richard had been involved in rituals. Others claimed he had links to spiritualist practices known to involve body parts. While nothing concrete had been proven on that front, the echoes of folklore and dark spiritual beliefs hovered over the case. Mental health was also raised as a possible factor. Experts debated whether Richard Appiah suffered from psychosis or schizophrenia. But even those theories could not fully explain the level of precision and cruelty involved in his actions. The case reignited a national conversation about how society handles mental illness, youth protection, and the lurking shadow of ritualism. Parents became more cautious. Schools increased their awareness campaigns. Communities began to look inward, asking themselves how such darkness could have gone unnoticed. The public demanded swift justice. As the trial loomed, the court ordered that Richard be subjected to psychiatric evaluation. He was held at the Accra Psychiatric Hospital for assessment. Some feared that he might be declared unfit to stand trial, thereby escaping accountability. Others hoped he would live long enough to provide answers. But one thing was certain: no explanation could undo the horror that was uncovered in that home. In the months that followed, tributes poured in for the victims. Their families were left devastated, left to mourn not only the loss of life, but the grotesque manner in which it was taken. People visited Abesim just to see the house. Others stayed far away, calling it cursed. It became a site of national trauma, a chilling reminder of how monsters can live in plain sight. To this day, the case of Richard Appiah remains one of the darkest and most deeply disturbing crimes in Ghana's history. And while legal proceedings continue, the scars left by his alleged crimes may never fully heal. What happened in Abesim was more than a crime. It was a collapse of trust, of humanity, and of the quiet safety people thought they had in their own communities. But it's not just Abesim. From Sakawa Boys to Kasoa, from the Baby Harvest to the Takoradi abductions, Ghana has shown us a chilling truth. When tradition, belief, and desperation meet unchecked power and silence, the consequences can be terrifying. And as we close this chilling journey through the shadows of Ghana, let us remember, behind every headline and every headline-grabbing horror, there are real people, real families, real pain. We tell these stories not to sensationalize tragedy, but to confront it. to shed light on the dark corners where justice struggles to reach, and to honor the memory of those whose lives were stolen, scarred, or silenced. If you made it this far, I want to hear from you. Which case shocked you the most? What are your thoughts on the connection between folklore, desperation, and crime in West Africa? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if there's a story from your country you think we should tell, let me know. Crimson Rift Africa is your space too. Stay safe, take care. I'll see you in the next video.